The emergency alert came through at 300 hours, ripping me from a dead sleep in my cramped quarters aboard the research vessel Prometheus. Medical emergency. Deck 7. All available personnel respond. I was the ship's xenobiologist, not a medic, but with only 40 crew members spread across a vessel designed for deep space exploration, everyone had basic medical training. I threw on my uniform and sprinted toward Deck 7, my heart pounding. The scene in the xenobiology lab stopped me cold. Dr. Zaraketh, our Thalorian chief of xenological research, was collapsed against a workstation, one hand pressed to her chest. Her normally pristine white lab coat was disheveled, and her silver-scaled skin had taken on a grayish pallor that made my stomach drop. Around her, 3 other crew members hovered uncertainly, clearly unsure what to do. Thalorians were humanoid in most respects, but their internal biology was different enough that human medical training could be dangerously inadequate. I knew the basics: dual cardiovascular systems, crystalline bone structure, temperature regulation through dermal scales. But detailed emergency medicine, that was beyond my expertise. Dr. Reeves, Zara gasped when she saw me, her usually melodic voice tight with pain. Something is wrong, my chest, the pressure. I dropped to my knees beside her, trying to keep my voice calm despite my own rising panic. Where exactly? Show me. She moved her hand slightly to the left of her sternum, right where a human heart would be, but where Thalorians had their primary cardiovascular nexus, a complex organ that pumped oxygenated fluid through their entire system. If something was wrong there, someone get Dr. Chen from medical, I barked at the nearest crew member. Now. But Zara's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. No time, it's not what you think. Zara, if your nexus is failing, listen. Her golden eyes, usually so bright and curious, locked onto mine with an intensity that made me shut up. I need you to trust me. This is going to look very strange. You're going to want to call for help to intervene. Don't. What are you talking about? She took a shuddering breath, then began systematically undoing the fastenings of her lab coat and the tunic beneath. The other crew members shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to look away or stay alert for medical intervention. Zara, what are you doing? Thalorian physiology, she managed through gritted teeth. There's something humans don't know, something we don't. Advertised to other species because it looks disturbing. As her tunic fell open, I saw her chest, the silver scales that covered her torso, the elegant symmetry of Thalorian anatomy. And then I saw something that made no biological sense. Her chest was moving, not with breath, not with the rhythmic pulse of her cardiovascular systems. Something underneath the scales was pushing outward, creating a bulge that shifted and pressed against her skin from the inside. "Oh my God," someone whispered behind me. "What is that?" Zara's jaw clenched. "Don't panic, this is normal for us." "That is not normal." I couldn't keep the horror from my voice. "Something's inside you?" "Yes," another shuddering breath. "Calcium-based life form gestated in the chest cavity, standard Thalorian reproductive cycle." The words took a moment to penetrate my panic, then they hit like a freight train. "Wait, you're pregnant?" "Brooding," she corrected through gritted teeth. "We don't do pregnancy like mammals. It's complicated." The bulge pushed out again, visibly distending her chest, and Zara let out a cry of pain. "The hatching process, it's starting." "Hatching?" My medical training was screaming at me to do something, anything, but her golden eyes held mine with desperate trust. The young must emerge through the chest cavity. The sternum separates, the nexus shifts aside. It's designed for this, evolved for this, but it's... Another wave of pain crossed her features. Extremely unpleasant. I stared at her, my mind racing to catch up with what she was telling me. You're saying your chest is about to open up and something's going to come out. Several somethings. Thalorians have clutches of 3 to 5. Her breathing was rapid now, shallow. I miscalculated, thought I had another week, should have gone into isolation before the brooding completed. Jesus Christ, Zara, why didn't you tell anyone you were pregnant, brooding, whatever? Because humans find Thalorian reproduction disturbing. She nearly shouted it, then winced as another contraction, or whatever the equivalent was, racked her body. Because I've seen the way other species react when they learn our young gestate in our chest cavities and emerge through our sternums. Because I didn't want to be treated like a horror show for the rest of the mission. The bulge was more pronounced now, and I could see individual movements beneath her scales, multiple small forms pressing, pushing, seeking exit. It looked like something from a nightmare, like the worst kind of parasitic invasion. And I finally understood why she'd kept this secret. Okay. I took a deep breath, forcing down my instinctive revulsion. This wasn't a horror show. This was biology, alien biology, yes, but biology nonetheless. Birth or hatching or whatever this was a natural process. What do you need? How can I help? Surprise flickered across her face. You're not running. I'm a xenobiologist, Zara. I've seen stranger things than alternative reproductive methods. That was a lie. I absolutely had not, but she didn't need to know that. Tell me what to do. She let out a breath that might have been relief or another pain response. The scales over my sternum. They need to be manually separated when the young begin to emerge. Otherwise, they can get caught, suffocate. It should be done by a brooding attendant, another Thalorian, but... She gestured weakly at the entirely human crew around her. I'll do it. The words came out before I could think better of them. Just tell me what to do. When the sternum begins to separate, you'll see it, a vertical line appearing down the center of my chest. You need to gently push the scales aside. Create an opening. The young will do the rest. Her hand gripped mine, her strength fading. And Dr. Reeves, they're going to look strange to you. Try not to show revulsion. They're babies, just babies. The vertical line she'd mentioned began to appear, a dark seam running down the center of her sternum. The scales on either side began to shift, pulling apart with a sound like dry leaves rustling. Underneath, I could see something pale and glistening. I reached out with trembling hands and did as she'd instructed, gently pushing the scales aside. The opening widened and I saw what lay beneath. A translucent membrane pulsing with movement. Through it, I could see small forms curled and waiting. The membrane, Zara gasped. It'll break on its own, don't touch it, just keep the scales clear. The membrane bulged outward, stretching thin, then suddenly ruptured with a soft, tearing sound. Fluid, clear and slightly viscous, gushed out, and with it came the first of Zara's young. It was tiny, no bigger than my palm, with soft silver scales that hadn't yet hardened and oversized golden eyes that blinked in the sudden light. It had a distinctly reptilian appearance, with a long tail and delicate clawed hands, but its face held an almost humanoid quality. It opened its mouth and let out a sound somewhere between a chirp and a cry. It was objectively one of the strangest things I'd ever seen. It was also undeniably adorable. "Oh," I breathed, unable to stop myself. "Oh, Zara, they're beautiful." Zara's eyes widened in shock. You think so?" A second young emerged, then a third, each one chirping as they wriggled free of their mother's chest cavity. I carefully gathered them as they came, supporting their soft bodies while keeping the scales clear for the remaining hatchlings. Four tiny Thalorian babies, their scales gleaming wet and their eyes bright with newborn curiosity. "I think they're incredible." I meant it. Yes, the emergence process was disturbing by human standards. Yes, watching something come out of someone's chest hit every horror movie trigger my brain possessed. But the end result? These tiny, vulnerable lives that had just entered the universe. They were perfect. Behind me, I heard someone being sick, one of the other crew members who'd watched the whole process. I couldn't blame them, but I kept my focus on Zara and her young, cradling the babies while she caught her breath. "The sternum," she said weakly. "It'll seal itself over the next few hours. The scales will realign, but I need to bond with them. Skin contact. They need to know my chemical signature." I helped her gather the four hatchlings against her chest, now that the opening had stopped expelling fluid. They immediately began nuzzling against her scales, making soft, trilling sounds. Zara's expression melted into something achingly tender. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you all, should have trusted you with this. You were protecting yourself." I sat back on my heels, my hands covered in birth fluids and my uniform soaked. "And honestly, I get it, It's different from human reproduction. People fear what they don't understand. Are you afraid?" I looked at the four tiny beings chirping against their mother's chest, then at Zara's exhausted but radiant face. "No, I'm awed." Dr. Chen arrived then, med kit in hand, skidding to a stop when he saw the scene. His eyes went wide, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "Thalorian reproductive process," I said calmly, as if I'd witnessed this 100 times. "Dr. Zaraketh has just hatched four healthy young. She'll need monitoring for the next few hours while her sternum reseals, and the hatchlings will need proper climate control and nutrition." Chen stared. Her chest opened. Evolutionary adaptation. The young gestate in a specialized cavity near the cardiovascular nexus, then emerge through a temporary separation of the sternum. I was making up half of this based on what I'd just witnessed, but Chen didn't need to know that. "Perfectly normal for her species." Right, normal, okay." Chen was clearly struggling, but to his credit, he knelt down and began running scans. "Vital signs, elevated stress markers, but otherwise stable," Zara said softly. "The young appear healthy, all four emerged successfully." News spread through the ship with predictable speed. By the time Zara was transferred to medical for observation, half the crew knew about the chest-bursting alien babies. The reactions were mixed. Some crew members were fascinated, asking questions about Thalorian biology and requesting to see the hatchlings. Others were visibly uncomfortable, giving Zara's room a wide berth. A few made poorly concealed horror movie references that made my blood boil. I found myself running interference, educating anyone who'd listen about the biological marvel of Thalorian reproduction. Yes, it was different from human birth. Yes, it looked disturbing to our mammalian sensibilities. But it was no less natural, no less beautiful in its own way. 3 days later, Zara was cleared to return to her quarters, now modified to accommodate four hatchlings who were growing at an alarming rate. I stopped by to check on her, finding her in a nest of soft thermal blankets with all 4 babies curled against her. "Dr. Reeves," she smiled when she saw me. "Come in. They've been asking about you." "They can ask already?" Thalorians develop rapidly in the first weeks after hatching. They're already beginning to form words. She gestured to the smallest of the 4 who had been watching me with bright, curious eyes. "This one keeps chirping Reeves. I think you made an impression." I sat carefully on the edge of her nest, and the smallest hatchling immediately climbed into my lap, its tiny claws pricking through my uniform. "Hi there, little one." "Reeves," it chirped, nuzzling against my chest. "I never properly thanked you," Zara said quietly, "for not running, for helping, for—" She paused, "for calling them beautiful. I meant it. I know that's what made it so powerful." Her golden eyes were soft. "I've been terrified of this moment since I realized I was brooding, terrified of how the crew would react, of being seen as monstrous, but you didn't flinch." "Well," she amended with a slight smile, "you flinched initially, but then you stayed." Xenobiology is about appreciating diversity in all its forms. I stroked the hatchling's soft scales. "Even when it challenges our preconceptions. The crew is calling you the human who wasn't horrified by chest-bursting aliens." I laughed. "I've been called worse. They're also calling me brave, for going through with the hatching in front of everyone, for not hiding." She looked down at her young. "I didn't feel brave, I felt exposed. Bravery and feeling exposed aren't mutually exclusive." The hatchling in my lap chirped again, and its siblings began climbing over, wanting attention. "For what it's worth, you've changed how this crew thinks about alien reproduction. You've made them confront their assumptions. By traumatizing them with my chest opening up. By showing them that different doesn't mean wrong." I met her eyes. "You've got 4 gorgeous, healthy babies, Zara. That's what matters." She smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "They are gorgeous, aren't they? Absolutely stunning, even if they did give everyone nightmares about chest-bursting aliens." Zara laughed, and the sound was joined by 4 tiny chirping laughs from her hatchlings. In the end, that was what everyone would remember, not the disturbing emergence process, but the joy in a new mother's eyes and the sound of baby laughter filling the ship. Biology was strange. The universe was full of reproductive processes that would horrify, fascinate, and amaze in equal measure. But life, in all its weird and wonderful forms, was always worth celebrating. Even when it came from somewhere as unexpected as a Thalorian's chest.